Neptune transits can be very powerful, sometimes certainly equal to Pluto, sometimes more so in terms of their intensity of upset to your life situation. It kind of depends upon which of those two planets, Neptune and Pluto, is stronger and more easily assimilated within your horoscope. But certainly Neptune transits can do so much more to shift your life than any other apart from Pluto, I would say. Now, the Neptune Square Neptune transit, which takes place, shall we say, around 40 years old, a little bit earlier for some people, a little bit later for others, is the biggest marker, shall we say, of your self-image and your relationship with life, conceptually, philosophically. And that's why it gets its reputation for sort of spiritual leanings and understandings. Neptune is to do with the nature of reality. And if you see spirituality to be to do with assessment of the nature of reality, fine, then Neptune is your spiritual thing. It's not necessarily anything to do with religion. So if you see spirituality to do with religious practices and so on, that really isn't Neptune, that's Saturn, I would say. So Neptune is all to do with working out what's going on, knowing that you'll never know. This is the mystery of Neptune. It's just not knowable. And all of the workings of scientific materialists to find out how to measure things and how to explain things and so on, it's futile because we don't know, we won't know, we can't know. And that's not only because it's too big for us to know, which it most assuredly is, it's just that it's built on paradox. The freedom that we have to generate free will comes from our ability to shape the mind. And we shape it according to some mysterious urge we have to create. So what Neptune represents is that which we have created. The illusion that we place upon life, that's our glamour, actually, in the correct sense of the word glamour. We pretty it up to make it palatable. Because life actually is ruthlessly horrible. It kills everything, and it kills it to feed something else. You know, and that's Pluto's mystery, this little birth-death thing. It goes on and on and on, and it's frightening, it's terrifying. And so we project an illusion onto the harsh reality of what life is and what death is. And that projection is Neptune. That's our illusion, and ours is different from anyone else's, because it comes out of this creative urge. Well, creativity is unique, or it's not creative. So we create reality the way we choose it to be if we have the power of choice. Otherwise, we actually experience reality the way someone else has chosen it to be. And I think if you can understand this, you're free. You're free of all of the things which you have so far been imprisoned by and restricted by. When you understand that you make it all up yourself, all of it, then you're liberated entirely. And I think what we understand from the Neptune Square Neptune transit is that the process of becoming liberated from the illusion that life is this way or that way or the other way, that's the process we go through. And it's incredibly upsetting. You might have thought that this was true and that was true, and it just isn't. And this applies to actually everything. All of your relationships, all of your senses of duty and stability and predictability, all of these things, they're washed away, dissolved. Neptune just takes away that which is false within you. And during the Neptune Square Neptune, you kind of get that life isn't the way you thought it was, the way you were told it was. And that's very deeply, deeply upsetting. Now, it goes on for a period of years, and that could be a long period of years or a short period of years, according to your own willingness to shift your perception. If you wake up to the fact that your life is dissolving in front of your eyes, then it's actually easier to cope with. This is a tremendous advantage in being interested in astrology and studying these transits. You know what's happening when it's happening, instead of later when you're looking back and you still might not understand. As an astrologer, you can see it coming, you can make arrangements for it, and when it happens you can understand it better, and therefore you can ease yourself into it. And Neptune approaches maybe 5 years before the exact date of the square, let's say that you feel something's not quite right. It didn't quite work, and you can't get a grasp on life, and everything you try just doesn't kind of work properly. And then you kind of realize that nothing you're trying is working properly. And then you start to realize that most of what you had and depended upon is no longer dependable. And then it just washes away. And we're talking about your home life, your relationships, your career, all the big things, even your health and your sense of self. All of these things are subject to the erasing force of Neptune. And it's necessary to have this happen if you're to avoid living the rest of your life in delusion. And most people, of course, do. They're deluded about the nature of reality. This is generally true. And those of us that are actually able to think about this Neptune question understand that we're making up this game here. And it's just that. It's a changeable game that we're playing. And the rules are never given to us. So the Neptune transit will leave you awash with nothing. And you might try and build another life up. And if you haven't understood the fundament upon which you can build, then the second life you've built up will also be washed away. It's almost pointless making a decision or a plan or a contract during a Neptune transit. It just gets washed away. Now, of course, when Neptune is on the ascendant, you have this sensitivity to all that happens. And if you find somebody whose horoscope is Neptune on the ascendant, they'll always say that they pick up vibes and they know things that they can't explain, and they're very, very sensitive. That's how they describe themselves. And this is because Neptune, when it's crossing the ascendant, is dissolving this interactive glass, shall we call it. If you're looking out at the world through coloured glass, and the world is looking at you through the same coloured glass, well, that glass, that colour of that glass is your ascendant. That's how I see it. And Neptune is just changing the colour of that glass. So you don't see what's going on clearly, because you've got to refocus. So you don't see the world properly, and the world doesn't see you properly. And there's this, well, you've got to feel your way through the world because you're blind. You know that nothing is the way it appears to be. And so you feel your way through. You've got these antennae that you kind of put out there, and you use a different sensory system to try and survive in this harsh world. And that sensitivity is itself a difficulty that sometimes overwhelms. So Neptune crossing the ascendant is a bit like that, crossing the descendant. And to some extent, the opposition and the square is the same. You would project not only onto the world at large, but also particularly onto a one-to-one relationship. So this, of course, could be your marriage partner, it could be a business partner, it could be in counselling, any one-to-one relationship, but usually we think about marriage partner. And so you'd not be able to see clearly what's going on. And very often people who've got Neptune on their descendant have a relationship with someone who is in need, deep need, and you're stimulated into compassion and even martyrdom, self-sacrifice to that level. You could be either side of that equation. You could try to reform a heroin addict or a drunk, or you could become lost in some illusion like drugs offer because of the relationship in some way. So it can work both ways. But the idea that you should perhaps create a relationship when Neptune is crossing the descendant, in fact, in the 7th house, which means that you're talking about a long period of time, you're going to have to watch out for the difference between what is and what you would like to be. Your fantasy is just not real. And that's generally true of relationships. Happily ever after is just a story. It's not how things are. Neptune on the angles emphasizes Neptune. So whichever of the angles you have Neptune on, you're a Neptunian type of person. This is true during the transit. So midheaven and IC are also going to emphasize Neptune very strongly within you generally, and particularly when it's applied to the midheaven. You might have a tremendous awareness of the zeitgeist. If we think about what the zeitgeist is, it's the time ghost, literally sort of translated. The Germans call it that. It just means the spirit of the age. You can track this using transits over the historical periods of time, and you see that each age has got its kind of nuances of energy. And when Neptune's on the midheaven, you're looking at a sense of the public at the moment through the eyes of this seer, this mystic. You just get where you are in time. Now that makes you hugely attractive for certain industries. For example, one would say photography and other forms of art that depend upon creating an illusion, or anything like that, storytelling and making it all up. You'd be very good at that in the way that the current mood of your community wants it to be. So it would be very powerful for those kind of occupations. Whereas if you wanted to actually create strong structures that last forever and make profits, like a managing director kind of person, or any sort of supervising or authority figure, Saturn type things, that's not going to help. So Neptune crossing your midheaven is going to give you an illusion about that. You might think that you're doing the job properly and nobody else actually agrees with you. You might be totally messing up, but you don't know it. Neptune on the nadir is going to give you a false sense of security. It's going to give you a sense that your home is stable and true when it's not. You're just projecting your yearning for that energy onto a situation, which is just not true. And that's the general truth of Neptune transits. We get to project our yearnings onto life much more strongly. And they're just that, they're projections. There's nothing real about that. And so we're inevitably going to be disappointed. So the Neptune transit is associated with disappointment or disillusionment. Disillusionment is actually a good thing in the long term. It just feels pretty horrible at the time. So Neptune in the long term is very wholesome. It's very helpful for us to move away from a degenerate sense of cause and effect, of blame and guilt, of me and you as being real, towards this sense of understanding that none of that is meaningful. There is no me, there is no you. Not really. And if we come to the Neptune transiting of the Sun, this becomes all the more clear. The whole idea of selfhood is very questionable indeed. When you get into Neptune's way of thinking, which you do on a Neptune transit, you get to realize that what you think of self just isn't. It doesn't really exist. The thoughts and the feelings and the behaviors are what you say is your identity, the physical body and so on. And yet, if you look at the span of someone's life, let's say arbitrarily 70 years, then how they were in terms of their feelings and their thoughts, their behaviors and their physical body, let's say, for example, when they were a baby, is absolutely nothing like what they are now, 70 years later. You know, not at all. They're not even made of the same stuff. Every single part of our physicality is renewed. On average, I think every 7 years, or every cell in the body is changed. So we have no relationship to our baby self in any real sense, apart from the illusion of continuity. So we don't actually feel the same as we did when we were a child. We don't think the same, we don't do the same things, and we're not made of the same stuff. And yet we've got the same name. Well, actually, that's not even true for many people. But you know, we're not what we were. There's just this sort of continuity of some kind. The only thing that defines us as self is the relationship that we have to the past and the future, not the stuff of reality. It's a concept, an idea. That's Neptune's wisdom. It's just saying, you know, you don't exist. And if you can say that for that 70-year period, I did exist, there's me at the beginning, there's me at the end, I just changed. All right. But what if that 70-year period was not that long? What if it was a tiny, tiny morsel of time that only scientists with greatly expensive machines could measure? It came into existence, then it disappeared before we could even see it. And such particles exist and make up everything physical. That's the foundation of our physicality. Things that come into existence for a moment and then disappear. And even then, it's not measurable. It's a probability that they did exist for that moment in time. Then did that thing exist or not? You know, if you can't actually grasp it, does it exist? And if it exists only really on a conceptual level because of the shortness of the time period, then what makes us think that our lifespan is significant in eternity? There's no difference between 70 years and 70 microseconds when it's compared to eternity. The whole thing, you know, this is Neptune thinking. It's just, there isn't any way you can get around the fact that Neptune is telling you on the Neptune Sun transit, you don't exist. For all intents and purposes, you don't exist. And this is very disturbing, and we might not understand that clever logic, but we certainly feel that sense of like, oh my God, what defines me as me? And we try to grasp something which is beyond the reach of Neptune's dissolving capacity. But they don't exist, those things. There is no foundation principle. They don't exist. That's the whole thing. There is no foundation for life. And you go through a Neptune Moon transit, and this kind of ability that we have just to dissolve and disintegrate on the deepest level of our security system can be very, very disturbing indeed. I would say, personally, my most difficult transit in my life has been my Neptune Square Moon transit. It just took everything from me, everything. My health, my family, my friends, my wife, my money, my reputation, everything just was dissolved. And it's necessary then to build your life up again. You have to create your life differently after a Neptune Sun transit and a Neptune Moon transit. Your fundaments of life have changed. You've got to recreate them out of nothing but your imagination. And that imagination might be based on your personal history, and it might not be. But whatever, you've got to reconstitute your life. And when applied to Mercury, you have to just check what you're doing with your mind. Neptune-Mercury transits do not make you clear-minded. They might increase your ability as a musician, or a poet, an artist, a photographer, but they don't make you clear of thought. Neptune-Venus transits are almost certainly going to draw you into an inappropriate relationship based on fantasy. You know, with somebody else who's going through another Neptune-Venus transit themselves. Neptune-Mars, this is associated with wanting to do the right thing, to idealize your actions as though there is a right way to act. So it's associated with spiritual warriors, people that serve visions and causes and that kind of thing. And you'll want to, take on the bad guys and dissolve their power and establish the word of God on earth and so on. And you'll think that that's real and important. When Neptune is transiting Jupiter, then you might well open up to a more cosmic sense of your life. I would say that is wholesome and good, because Jupiter's also a ruler of Pisces, as Neptune is. So they do have this resonance together on this level of the highest cosmic reach to which we can expand our consciousness. You can imagine what a Neptune-Saturn transit is like. Saturn's saying, what I can measure is true and factual, and Neptune's saying, come on, measurement's nothing, it's not real. And they've got totally different views of reality. Saturn is the particle reality, Neptune is the wave reality. And as is well known, we cannot reconcile whether light, in other words, energy, life, is particle or wave, whether it's the facts of the matter now or the inclination for things to continue the way they always have. And this fundamental paradox of life is examined when Neptune is in transit to Saturn. You're given a certain amount of freedom with the Neptune transit. The freedom to just say, whatever, nothing's real, I might as well just do what I feel like doing. But Saturn's saying, yeah, but there will be a price. So you can't really escape the fact that Neptune transits are going to shift your consciousness. And when you get into the consciousness of the mystic, then, and perhaps only then, are you safe in a Neptune transit, safe from the debilitating fact that you're going to lose tangible things that aren't representative of your highest vision of who you are and what God is, I suppose.